Evaluate the impact of the public interest litigations. The PIL is public interest litigation on the protection and promotion of the fundamental rights in India. The impact of the public interest litigation on the protection and promotion of fundamental rights in India. Public interest litigation, it allows individuals or groups, right, or groups to file petitions in the court on behalf of who are unable to approach the judiciary themselves. So this is what we call it as a public interest litigation. Public interest litigation is when there are individuals. So these individuals cannot go and file a petition. They cannot go and file a petition by themselves. Therefore, other individuals or groups, they might be groups, they help file petitions in the court on behalf of those who are unable to approach the judiciary by themselves. It has significantly impacted the protection and promotion of fundamental rights in India. Access to justice. Public interest litigation have democratized access to justice by following any public-spirited individual or organization to file petitions on behalf of the marginalized and disadvantaged groups. Right? They do not know the judicial processes to even file a case. Therefore, public interest litigation has democracy. Democracy is through access of the justice by allowing many public-spirited individual or organization to file petitions on behalf of marginalized and disadvantaged groups. What is judicial activism? Public interest litigations have facilitated judiciary's activism, enabling the court to address a wide range of the social, economic, and environmental issues. We have various cases. The first is Husainara Khaton Husainara Khaton. In Husainara Khaton versus the state of Bihar, this has happened in the Bihar in 1979. Public interest litigation led to the release of thousands of under trial prisoners who had been languishing in the jail for years without a trial. So, prisoners who were imprisoned even without a trial, and a safeguard of those prisoners were enabled during the Husainara Khaton. So, the case is known as the Husainara Khaton. The case is known as the Husainara Khaton versus the state of Bihar. So this is the Bihar in 1979. So Husainara Khaton versus state of Bihar in 1979. Public interest litigation led to the release of. We need to have the release of. Okay, release of the there was thousands of under trial prisoners. They are prisoners. So thousands of under trial prisoners who had been languishing in the jail for years without a trial. Vikasha versus the state of Rajasthan. Vikasha is for sexual harassment. Vikasha Yadav, Vikasha versus the state of Rajasthan in 1997. The public interest litigation resulted in the formulation of guidelines to prevent sexual harassment of women at the workplace. The Supreme Court guidelines to prevent sexual harassment. MC Mehta is related to environment. MC Mehta versus Union of India is in 1986 itself. We have been speaking about environment. The series of public interest litigations led to significant environmental regulations and policies to control pollution. The impacts this public interest litigations has been instrumental in expanding the scope of the fundamental rights and addressing the issues of public interest and holding the government accountable. They have played a vital role in social transformation and realizing of constitutional goals. Now, how has the interpretation of Article 21 by the judiciary expanded the ambit of right to life and personal liberty? Now, Article 21, we have to mention, right? So, no person shall be deprived of his life. We have a person, and sometimes the person is deprived of his life and his personal liberty. But this deprivation should not happen randomly, except according to the procedure established by the law. So procedure, only through the procedures which is provided by the law, a person can be deprived of his life and personal liberty. So procedure is established by the law. We have the procedure established by the law. Over the years, the judiciary has expanded the interpretation of Article 21 to include wide range of the rights. Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India in 1978. This case expanded the meaning of right to life and personal liberty to include the right to fair procedure, thus ensuring procedural due processes. Olga Tillis versus Bombay Municipal Corporation is right to livelihood as an integral part of the right to life under Article 21. Unnikrishnan versus State of Andhra Pradesh included the right to education. Is Unnikrishnan versus the State of Andhra Pradesh. Olga Tillis is the right to livelihood. Okay, livelihood is 1985 and Unnikrishnan 1993 is education. Puttaswamy is privacy. Manika Gandhi is ensuring to include the fair procedure and due process of the law. Right. Manika Gandhi is due process of the law. Olga Tillis is livelihood. Olga Tillis case 1985 is related to right to livelihood and Unnikrishnan versus the state of Andhra Pradesh 1993 is right to education within the ambit of Article 21. Puttaswamy case is related to privacy and the ambit, expanded ambit, the interpretation of Article 21 has expanded to include various rights such as the right to clean environment, right to health, right to shelter, and right to free legal aid and speedy trial also. So environment, health, environment, shelter, free legal aid, and speedy trial, right? We need to have an environment, we need to have even a shelter also, and then we need to have free legal aid is included over here, and environment is also included. This expansive interpretation has significantly enhanced the protection of individual rights and liberties in India. Analyze the balance between the fundamental rights and directive principles of state policies as envisaged by the Indian Constitution. Balance between the fundamental rights and directive principles of the state policy. The Indian Constitution seeks a balance between the fundamental rights is Part 3 of the Constitution, with the directive principles in Part 4 of the Constitution. While fundamental rights are justiciable and enforceable, the DPSPs are not justiciable, but they aim to create a social and economic conditions under which the citizens can lead a good life. Now, what is the balance between fundamental rights and DPSPs? First, we have harmonious construction. This is a doctrine of harmonious construction. It is a balance, a harmonious balance between fundamental rights and DPSP. This doctrine of harmonious construction. So we have this as the doctrine of the harmonious construction. There's a balance. The judiciary has often emphasized the need for a harmonious construction of the fundamental rights and directive principles. So harmonious construction is the judiciary has often emphasized the need for harmonious construction of fundamental rights and directive principles. In Minerva Mills versus the Union of India 1980, the Supreme Court held that the Indian Constitution is founded on the bedrock of balance between Part 3 and Part 4. So it is very important. The Minerva Mills case is 1980 has mentioned that the Supreme Court has mentioned that the Indian Constitution is founded on the bedrock of there needs to be a balance between the Part 3 and Part 4. So we have two things over here. The first one is harmonious construction. The first one is harmonious construction, and in Minerva Mills case of 1980, where the constitution is founded on a bedrock of a balance between the part 3 and then we have the part 4. The supremacy of the fundamental rights. In place of the conflict between the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy, the court has generally given precedence to the fundamental rights. However, directive principles has been used to interpret the scope of fundamental rights and to justify the state's action aimed at achieving social and economic justice. The courts have used directive principles to expand the scope of fundamental rights. For example, in Unnikrishnan versus the state of Andhra Pradesh, we have right to education was derived from directive principles and incorporated into Article 21. So, Unni Krishnan versus the state of Andhra Pradesh is 1993, where the right to education is derived from the directive principles and it is incorporated into Article 21. Now, the balance between the fundamental rights and the directive principles ensure the individual liberties are protected while promoting the welfare and development of the society as a whole. This balance is crucial for achieving the constitutional goals of justice, equality, and then we have the fraternity. Now, what is the significance of Article 32 and Article 226 in protecting the fundamental rights? Significance of Article 32 and Article 226 in protecting the fundamental rights. Article 32 provides a right to move to the Supreme Court for the enforcement of the fundamental rights. Empowers the Supreme Court to issue the writs, directions, or orders for the enforcement of any of the rights conferred by Part 3 of the Constitution. And this Article 226 empowers high courts to issue writs for the enforcement of fundamental rights as well as for other purposes. So, for the enforcement of fundamental rights, we have Article 226 empowers the High Court to issue the writs for the enforcement of fundamental rights, provides broader jurisdiction compared to Article 32, allowing the High Courts to address violations of legal rights beyond the fundamental rights. Direct access. Article 32 ensures the direct access to the Supreme Court for the protection of fundamental rights, making it the guardian of these rights. Writ jurisdiction. Both Article 32 and Article 226 empower the judiciary to issue writs, ensuring the speedy and effective remedy against the violation of the rights. Judicial review. They enable the judicial review of legislative and executive actions to ensure the conformity to the Constitution. Bandhua Mukti Morcha versus Union of India 1984 is where Supreme Court used its powers under Article 32 to address issues of bonded labor. S.P. Gupta, Supreme Court emphasizes the importance of Article 32 and 226 in protecting the rights of citizens.